The Israel and Palestine conflict is one of the most enduring and complex geopolitical struggles in modern history, with roots that stretch back for millennia. To understand the conflict today, one must delve into the past, into a story shaped by ancient civilizations, colonial powers, and competing nationalism. From the promise of a homeland to the displacement of entire populations, this conflict's history is marked by hope, despair, and an ever-elusive quest for peace. The seeds of the modern conflict were sown in the late 19th century. In 1891, an Austrian journalist named Theodor Herzl arrived in Paris, France, at the time a hub of revolutionary ideals and progressive thought. Herzl, a Jew, was familiar with anti-Semitism, which was widespread in his homeland. However, France, having undergone its own revolution, was expected to be different, a land of equality and free thought. But Herzl soon realized that even in this supposed bastion of liberalism, anti-Semitism was rampant. The turning point for Herzl came with the Dreyfus Affair, a scandal that rocked France. A Jewish French army captain named Alfred Dreyfus was falsely accused of selling military secrets to Germany. The conviction was later overturned, but the incident revealed the deep-rooted anti-Semitism that permeated French society. For Herzl, it became clear the Jewish needed a homeland where they could live without fear of persecution. Thus, the idea of Zionism, a political movement advocating for the establishment of a Jewish state, was born. Herzl envisioned his homeland in Palestine, the ancient land of the Israelites. In 1896, Herzl founded the Zionist movement, which sought to create a Jewish state in Palestine, the historic homeland of the Jewish people. Zionism was not just about religion, it was a political movement aimed at reclaiming a land where Jews could live free from discrimination. To understand the significance of Palestine to the Jews, one must look back to the ancient history of Israel. Jewish, originally known as Israelites, trace their roots to around 1000 BC in West Asia, in the area now known as modern-day Israel. According to Jewish tradition, their ancestry can be traced back to three patriarchs: Abraham, his son Isaac, and his grandson Jacob. The Jewish faith holds that God promised Abraham a homeland in the land that is now Israel, a promise often referred to as the Promised Land. The ancient homeland was once a thriving Jewish kingdom, often called the Golden Age of Israel, marked by the regions of King David and Solomon. King David is credited with founding Jerusalem, and his son Solomon built the first great temple, which became the center of Jewish worship. However, this prosperity was short-lived as the Jewish people faced a series of invasions that would forever alter their history. Over centuries, Israel was invaded by various empires, including the Assyrians, Babylonians, Persians, Romans, and finally the Ottomans. Each conquest resulted in the displacement of Jews from their homeland. The most devastating blow came during Roman rule, when the Roman crushed the Jewish revolt, destroyed the temple in Jerusalem, and scattered the survivors. This diaspora marked the beginning of centuries of Jewish exile, with communities settling across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. By the 19th century, the Jewish diaspora was well established across Europe. However, Jews often faced severe discrimination and violence, leading to the growth of Zionism as a nationalist movement. Herzl and his fellow Zionists believed that the only solution to anti-Semitism was the establishment of a Jewish state. In 1897, Herzl organized the first Zionist Congress in Basel, Switzerland, where the goal of establishing a Jewish homeland in Palestine was formally declared. However, there was a major obstacle. Palestine was not an empty land. It was home to a significant Arab population who had lived there for centuries. the Zionists faced the daunting task of securing land in a region under Ottoman control. Herzl initially tried to negotiate with the Ottoman Sultan, offering to pay off the empire's foreign debts in exchange for allowing Jewish settlement in Palestine. When this failed, the Zionists turned to Plan B, purchasing land from local Ottoman landlords. This marked the beginning of the first wave of Jewish migration to Palestine. Jewish settlers began buying land, setting up agricultural communities, and establishing towns like Tel Aviv. However, these settlements often clashed with the local Arab population, who saw the newcomers not as neighbors, but as colonizers with plans to take over. As tensions grew in Palestine, the world was thrust into the chaos of World War I. The Ottoman Empire, which controlled Palestine, was on the losing side, and after the war, Britain emerged as a major power in the region. In 1917, the British government issued the Balfour Declaration, a landmark document that expressed support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. The declaration was seen as a major victory for Zionists, but further inflamed tensions with the Arab population, who lived betrayed by British promises of self-determination. Under British control, Jewish migration to Palestine increased significantly. Wealthy Jewish families, such as the Rothschilds, funded the purchase of land and the development of Jewish communities. However, the influx of Jewish immigrants, many fleeing persecution in Europe, led to increased friction with the local Arab population. By 1930s, tensions had reached a boiling point, resulting in violent clashes between Jewish and Arab communities. To address the growing unrest, Britain proposed a partition of Palestine into separate Jewish and Arab states. However, the plan was rejected by the Arab leadership, who were deeply divided and unable to agree on a unified response. The Jewish community, although still a minority in Palestine, was better organized and financially supported, allowing them to build a strong foothold in the region. As World War II loomed, the situation in Palestine grew increasingly volatile. In 1947, Britain, exhausted by the ongoing conflict and unable to find a solution, handed over the issue to the newly formed United Nations. The UN proposed a partition plan that would divide Palestine into separate Jewish and Arab states, with Jerusalem under international control. While the Jewish community accepted the plan, the Palestinians and surrounding Arab nations rejected it outright, viewing it as unjust and favoring the Zionist cause. On May 14, 1948, the State of Israel was declared, and David Ben-Gurion noted in his diary on July 18, 1948, "We must do everything to ensure that they, the Palestinians, never return." Immediately, 5 Arab nations, Egypt, Syria, Jordan, Iraq, and Lebanon, launched a military assault. However, the newly formed Israel Defense Forces were well prepared and determined, fighting not only for land, but also for survival. Despite being outnumbered, Israel achieved a decisive victory, expanding its territory beyond the borders established by the UN partition and occupying 77% of Palestine that had been under British control. This conflict, known as the 1948 Arab-Israel War, led to the displacement of over 700,000 Palestinians, a tragedy referred to as the Nakba, or catastrophe, in the Arab world. The 1948 war didn't resolve the conflict, it only set the stage for further battles. In 1967, tensions again erupted into war when Israel launched a preemptive strike against Egypt, Syria, and Jordan. In just 6 days, Israel captured the West Bank, Gaza Strip, Sinai Peninsula, and Golan Heights, drastically altering the map of the region. This war not only solidified Israel's military dominance, but also increased the Palestinian refugee crisis, as even more land was brought under Israeli control. The territories captured in the 6-day war, particularly the West Bank and Gaza, remain central to the conflict today. Despite international calls for Israel to withdraw, settlements have continued to expand into these areas, further complicating any attempts at a two-state solution. Meanwhile, the Palestinian territories have suffered from economic hardship, restricted movement, and periodic violence. Today, the Israel-Palestine conflict remains deeply entrenched, with both sides holding firm to their historical narratives and claims to the land. Palestinians seek statehood based on the pre-1967 borders, which would encompass the West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem. However, Israel has repeatedly rejected these borders, citing security concerns and the reality of extensive Jewish settlements in the West Bank. The ongoing occupation has led to numerous uprisings, including the first and second Intifadas, Palestinian uprisings against Israeli rule. Attempts at peace, such as the Oslo Accords and the Camp David Summit, have repeatedly failed, primarily due to disagreements over key issues like borders, the status of Jerusalem, and the right of return for Palestinian refugees. In Gaza, controlled by the militant group Hamas, the situation is particularly dire. Israel maintains a blockade, citing security concerns over Hamas's rocket attacks. The humanitarian situation in Gaza is dire, with frequent conflicts erupting between Israeli forces and Palestinian militants, causing civilian casualties and widespread destruction. While the conflict is still viewed as a regional issue, it is deeply intertwined with global politics. Historically, European powers played a significant role in shaping the conflict. European anti-Semitism drove Jewish to seek a homeland in Palestine, while British and French colonial ambitions drew artificial borders and stoked ethnic tensions across the Middle East. The United States has also been a key player, consistently supporting Israel militarily and politically, often vetoing UN resolutions critical of Israeli policies. Meanwhile, Arab nations, though initially supportive of the Palestinian cause, have increasingly prioritized their national interests, leading to a more fragmented Arab response. The future of Israel-Palestine conflict remains uncertain. While some advocate for a two-state solution where Israelis and Palestinians live side by side in peace, others see this as increasingly unfeasible given the realities on the ground. The expansion of the Israeli settlements, the division between Palestinian factions, and a lack of political will on both sides make the path to peace elusive. The Israel-Palestine conflict, rooted in history, nationalism, and identity, remains one of the most complex disputes of our time. Both Jewish and Palestinians have long fought for the right to claim the land as their own, making the struggle about much more than territory. It is about identity and self-determination. Despite numerous wars and peace efforts, a lasting solution remains elusive. The challenge is to find a path where both sides can coexist, not as enemies, but as neighbors, through dialogue, compromise, and a shared recognition of humanity. The hope lies in moderates on both sides leading the way to peace.